guidelines.
Okay, we up and running?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay, it is Tuesday, May 5th, 2020. Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Born and unborn.
Okay, minutes and reports received and filed.
April 2020 clerk fees filed, reporter fees filed, and April 2020 auditor's report filed.
Okay. Commissioner Committee Liaison Reports, upcoming meetings, events.
I think everything that I've got on my calendar has been canceled or postponed, except for Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to all you moms out there a little early. That's all I've got for that WebEx meeting Monday. Or cancel, I believe. Nope, that is a COVID-19 briefing. That's it.
So I've got a courthouse progress meeting tomorrow at 9. I got a Sleep to America meeting at 11:30 on Wednesday. Heartland Port Authority final presentation, DIS and Mercator. That is Wednesday at 1 o'clock, and that's a go-to meeting. Do we have radio on Friday?
Yeah, we do. 8:05. You want to do it or you want me to?
I'm not going on that show, so.
Okay, I will do it. I think you
Until
did
they get
last
somebody
month,
that's
so-
got a brain, I'm not going on that show, so.
Okay, I will do that. Today, we have a policy group call. If John remembers and gives me the number I'm supposed to call.
5.
Tomorrow I get to talk to Williams Keepers, because Kristen says I have to. Thursday I got Cap Region. Friday, I wonder if the Renegades are gonna start back up now that I had that down for Friday.
Well, he
Possibly.
usually emails the day
Yeah.
before anyway, so we won't know till then.
Yeah, and then I will do KWAS at 8:05. And that's all we've got, I've got. Commission comments, bids and contracts, 2020 pavement preservation seal, contract award and signing.
Gave you all a spreadsheet that kind of outlines what we got this year. This is our annual pavement preservation seal program with corrective asphalt materials. The contract amount is $157,493.23. A little more than normal, and I explained that in the notes below on the sheet. We added the Meadowbrook Estate subdivision and Crossroads subdivision this year. We didn't do it last year because we paid later in the year and we were a little tight on budget, so we pushed that into this year. So that's an additional amount that we would have normally had the year before. Also, another product, or the normal product that we do with corrective asphalt materials is Reclamite. That's the rejuvenator that we put on the pavement the year after. A follow-up treatment a few years down the road is a product called CRF, and we had some issues with the last year's overlay contract, some deficiencies, some raveling of the top of the surface due to what we think is some compaction problems. Talking with corrective asphalt materials, they recommended the CRF product as a solution to that problem. So this year, we're doing that on some of the overlay roads from last year, the ones that are having the issues. And that would be paid for, that additional cost would be paid for through the asphalt contract from last year with Higgins Asphalt. We've actually held retainage. We haven't closed the contract out, and so we would take that cost out of the retainage. And that amount would be $31,570.58. So the net cost of the amount that I gave earlier to the county this year for our budget would be $125,975.65. So I'd recommend approval of the contract with corrective asphalt materials
So is that Reclamite gonna take care of the problems, or is this something we're gonna have to wait and see?
The Reclamite is the rejuvenator that we put on all, we treat all pavements the year after. That's our normal thing that we've done for
Right.
several years. The CRF is the higher grade for more deteriorated pavements. We've used that in the past. On some pavements, it does work. We feel that it will address the issues that we had from last year. We're not doing it on everything last year. There's,
Well, just the ones that you had the compaction problems on.
yeah, there's
So-
3 roads that they did last year, that Higgins did last year, that aren't seeing the problems. It's certain ones that got a little bit later in the year. So we do feel that that'll solve the issue, and we should get as close to normal life out of the pavement as possible. In addition to the CRF that we're adding to last year's roads, there's also some of the work that the contractor has to mill and replace, and has done some of that already, and they're gonna be doing more in the next few weeks. So that's in addition to this preventative maintenance that we're doing on it this year.
That was all done on a cooperative with City of Moberly project.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. We piggyback off the city of Moberly's bid. We've done that every year. It's a simple, easy way to do it. And Moberly does the bidding and accommodates us and other counties and cities piggybacking off of their bid.
So I guess, I mean, I'm good with it. I just kinda, so you say the net cost to the county for 2020 pavement preservation seal is $125,000, but total contract price is only $157,000, so.
Yeah.
I'm just kinda wondering where that lies. I mean, like
So we're going to deduct from the retainage owed to Higgins
Right.
from last year, the amount of $31,517.58.
Okay,
And so that'll reduce technically what we're owing in this year. It's just a change of, moving money around in our budget. We'll have to do the contract for 157, we'll encumber it for that amount.
Right.
And then once we deduct out of the retainage, we'll reimburse it back into that account. Right? Sort of. We'll figure it out.
but this is a cost that we had anticipated for this year.
We actually would, normally our cost is about 80,000, give or take.
Okay.
I told you, we added the Meadowbrook
Right.
and Crossroads, so that added extra cost, plus this extra stuff with the CRF.
Okay.
Yep.
Move that we sign the construction contract with Corrective Asphalt Materials for the 2020 pavement preservation seal program.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sole source approval for respirators.
I think we're gonna pull that one, we are gonna pull that one. We believe we have found a cooperative that we can purchase from. We're trying to firm up the contracts, and as soon as we get that done, we'll put it back on and be back with you.
Okay. Approval and signing of change order number 2 on the courthouse site project.
This is for $786.09. It's change order number 2.
So a couple of things that happened there is, actually, looked at, changing the color, also changing the width of the sidewalk and stuff, out there. It was way too wide to make everything work out. And it just kinda looked funny too, so, anyway. But, this was, to add some color, to the regular concrete. It's recommended that the gray might just stand out so much, so that we just added a little color to soften that, so we're working on approval of that. Questions, comments?
Yeah, I mean, it was a small one, but where were we at on the total budget of it? Well,
Was-
the original contract was 321 and now we're at 340, so what did we have?
It's on that paper I just gave you, I think, Sam, at the top. I kinda had it on the side, the original bid and then the change orders.
On this paper,
Yes, at the top right-hand corner,
Over,
the original contract amount,
yes, and then the change orders.
but the contract amount's not what we necessarily approved for,
The original
But-
contract sum would have been the 321,920.
if we approved it at 350, but the bids come in at 321,
That's the amount we signed, that's the contract we signed. But there may have been some things in there that was an option. I know that statue or the memorial, depending on what you did with that, was that gonna change the price? I can't remember offhand, but
no, we'll have to put a base in, but the monument will be paid for by the bicentennial committee.
okay.
So the base is included in the project, so the base will be there,
Yeah, yeah.
so.
I mean, this one's a 735, I'm not gonna hold this up for that one, but I was just curious where we were at on the total budget, kinda as a general question, because we had a couple other change orders, so.
Yeah, we had to do, so we did some parge coating and some waterproofing, and that, some of that totaled into that 17,392.
There was 3 different ones in that first one.
Right.
I don't know if I have all that stuff here, so let's move on with it.
Okay.
I'll look it up and figure out, and then if I got issues with it, we can bring it up later.
I think there's still $25,000 in there for a monument that probably won't get spent, but
Okay,
anyway.
that's what I was remembering.
So, yeah, let's
I
move
move,
with this
I
one.
move that we approve and sign change order number 2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do we have any unfinished business? New business? Accounts payable review.
I'd ask for approval of accounts payable pending review.
Hang on just a second here, Debbie. I'm looking at this. Was that change order number 2, or is it change order number 3?
Technically, it's 2. I separated out each one of those in the first one,
Okay,
so that's where I was coming
Alright.
up different. Yeah,
okay.
they say it's 2, so.
All right. I move that we approve accounts payable pending review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Second and final reading of budget adjustment number 5.
Number 5 is for $16,226.75. This is the health department. This was an insurance payment for the vehicles over there. So I do need action today to change the budget so we can get those paid for whenever they get them in the shop.
I move that we sign court order number 5.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Second and final reading of budget adjustment number 6.
This is for $52,745.42. This is the sheriff's department's hail damaged vehicles.
Move that we sign court order number 6.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
First reading of budget adjustment number 7.
This is for $62,921.35. No action today. This is the HAVA grant money for the county clerk's office.
Okay.
Oops, sorry.
Okay. First reading of budget adjustment number 8.
This is for $78,781.07. This is the CARES Act, money that we got on the HHS Provided Relief Fund. So that was the first one that we received.
So the money on the previous one was CARES Act money as well. So CARES Act money for HAVA. This is CARES Act Provider Relief Fund for EMS.
Right.
Yes.
First reading of budget adjustment number 9.
This
Yep.
is for $85,762.35. This is for the, I never get the
VAWA grant.
VAWA grant from the prosecutor's office. And so no action today, we'll just hold it for 10 days.
Okay. First reading of budget adjustment number 10.
This is, you got the amount with you?
This is the coronavirus relief fund, that you signed the agreement for on Friday. It's the $9,000,000.
$3,720.
Yep.
And no action today, just hold it for 10 days.
Okay. EMS emergency purchase.
Yes, sir. We had to purchase cardiac medications. I know we reached out to you and let you know we could not get them through our normal suppliers that have bids. We went through our supplier and our two backups. We were unable to find the cardiac medications that we needed. However, we did find them through another supplier. The total amount was $43,2178. But we knew with other purchases we'd made with that company, it was gonna be skating the $6,000 over 90 days, so that's why the emergency purchase.
Who was the company we purchased with?
We purchased these from a company called Gulf Coast Pharmaceuticals Plus. And I will tell you, when you can't find them anyplace else, you can get them from them, but they're expensive. So we didn't buy any more than we felt we had to have. Due to the COVID running codes, code medications are short in supply.
Okay.
I did send Debbie a copy of that, so you'll have it for your, I just sent it to you on my phone.
This gonna become kind of the norm on some of our,
I'm afraid for a while it could be.
yeah.
I move that we approve the emergency purchase for EMS with the Gulf Coast Pharmaceutical Plus.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, discussion of CARES Act agreement of federal funding.
Okay, so on Friday, May 1st, Cole County voted to sign the federal funding certification for the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which is money coming from the CARES Act. In that certification, we agreed that we would use the money for necessary expenditures incurred from March 1st to December 30th. The funds not expended by March 31st, 2021 must be returned to the state. They cannot be used for revenue replacement. And the county is required to keep all of the documentation. We are ultimately responsible for all funds spent. We cannot use the fund for expenses we have already received from other COVID-19 funding. Those necessary expenditures include expenditures to allow a local government to respond directly to the emergency, as well as expenditures incurred to respond to second order effects. So I got some more information from MAC yesterday. Hopefully you guys got
Yeah.
copies of that as well. I was also on a webinar with NACO trying to get some more information. Some of the terms at the moment are very broad, and there could be more restrictions coming. So we need to be very cautious with this money, and we need to be very methodical in how we decide to use it. So one of the recommendations from MAC was to establish a process similar to a grant application and award system. The county would make case-by-case determinations based on established criteria. So right now we don't have that established criteria. That's kind of where we're starting today, is we need to determine what that looks like. And then we need to make sure that we have written agreements, because we are ultimately liable. So we need to make sure that we're making sure they're spending it on something that's approved, that they're required to submit all the documentation to us, any of those requirements. We have talked about the possibility of doing multiple rounds, so maybe dividing it up and using it for different things. One kind of floated was doing like 3 rounds. Maybe one is like protection, so PPE, something that's needed right away. Those kinds of things could go first. The possibility of doing prevention, so things we want to put in place to prevent the spread. And then possibly a recovery. So maybe recover some of the salaries, overtime, things like that that are spent, programs to help with the recovery process due to everything being closed. So right now that's just a suggestion. There's nothing set in stone. I think there's going to have to be multiple meetings to determine all of the paperwork and requirements that we are going to have in place for anyone else to apply for those funds. So, kind of throw it back to you guys. There is a draft press release if you guys,
Yep.
I filled in Cole County and the dollar amount. If you guys want to release that, you can.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't wanna spend a year at Leavenworth or over at John's place, so I think we need to be very, very, very careful.
Really nice though.
Can I get a room with a view?
Sure. Good yard.
And I think that there's multiple people in the room right now that possibly have some suggestions and things that the county will have as far as expenditures and things like that, if you want to talk through what some of those are.
I think the health department and EMS are probably gonna incur the most, and, so, I don't even,
Right now, the majority of our expenses has been staff time. Last time I checked, we had 16 of our staff had done some sort of activities associated with COVID-19. And it was, back in April, I totaled up that, and we were over 1,500 hours already. But like I said, that was at the beginning of April, so, and we have been keeping track in our time sheets when it started of the time. So our staff time, there are some staff that have overtime. We've been trying to have them use it as they could. There's some of us that, of course, keep track but don't get to claim that time. I think that we do need to do a more aggressive educational campaign. I've been requesting materials from Department of Health and Senior Services, and frankly, just nobody's had the time to do it. They're starting a little task force tomorrow, and they asked me to be a part of that because there needs to be some very plain language materials on how it's spread and what people can do for prevention, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think if we could produce some materials and do an educational campaign, that would be very helpful for the community. If we decide to do testing at the health department, we would need funding for that, for the test kits, for the actual test if we didn't go through the state public health lab, and of course PPE. A lot depends on what the hospitals decide to do. Department of Health and Senior Services keeps pushing for more tests to be done, but the hospitals aren't seeing the numbers, so I know that they have changed their hours at the testing sites because there isn't a lot of requests right now for the testing. But if we decide to do that, then we would have to have infection control at the health department, or figure out a way to do that through our drive-through if we did it in our driveway. But our staff would definitely need PPE, and we would have to pay for the testing materials. We also would like to get a quantitative fit testing machine for the N95 mask. Right now we do use a qualitative fit testing kit that is done by a person, and the port account quantitative fit testing machines are a lot faster. And of course it's a quantitative test instead of a qualitative test. So we would like to get one of those, and I think EMS is considering that too. So a lot of PPE, cleaning, decon supplies, and if there would be a vaccine produced and we are of course responsible for vaccinating the entire county, we would need some supplies and perhaps some temporary workers to help make that happen quickly. So that's just our quick list of pulling some ideas together. But for right now, the majority of what we've done is staff time.
And how will we know what portion of that staff time? Will we have criteria on what we can charge to that versus what is part of the normal operations of the health department?
Well, if we can't, how can I say this? Okay, so we can't double dip, obviously.
Right.
The only money that we get currently right now to do contact tracing or inspection rate is from that aid to local public health agreement. And I think I looked it up, the other day for the article. It's like $152,000 a year, and it doesn't specifically say who it pays for. It pays for communicable disease investigations, like I said, and other things. So technically, we have not received any additional funds from DHS for COVID-19. So that's easy accounting there to zero. So and I don't know if it says specifically in there. I didn't get a chance to read it last night because I was in meetings all afternoon with the schools about what staff time we could bill.
Well, so there's a couple of different factors there. Normally, FEMA only pays for overtime associated with an emergency. However, the guidance for this does not explicitly exclude straight time for employees who have been reassigned to COVID work or other special overtime. So there's a little bit of gray area there compared to normal. But one of the other requirements is that we cannot use it for something that was originally in our budget. So if those employees were originally budgeted, I think there's some confusion on, other than their overtime, their cost was already included in our budget prior to the pandemic. So.
But if they're salaried employees that just expended additional hours at no expense to the county, then there's nothing we can reimburse for.
So that's again another gray area.
Right.
I think that there is some leeway on like hazard pay or something like that, but they would like to see that policy in place prior to, and I'm not sure that we have any sort of policy like that in place at the moment. So that's another gray area.
That's pretty much what I've been reading, is nothing is very
Correct.
Detailed and directed, and everything is left to the commission to decide, and I don't really care for that at all.
No, we need more clarification.
So right now they've kind of given a very broad list of examples of eligible expenses, with the caveat at the end that anything that we determine to be necessary to help with the situation could be included. So they go through medical expenses, public health expenses, PPE, payroll expenses. We can do food delivery, technology for distance learning, teleworking, paid sick leave and family leave, to maintain the jail, care of homeless populations, economic support. But then at the end, any other COVID-19 related expense necessary. So it's a very broad spectrum at the moment, and I would not be surprised if there is additional restrictions that come eventually.
So then when they audit us, they disallow half of that.
So it says in the guidance from MAC that paragraph 5 in the federal funding certification that was signed on Friday requires the use of funds must comply with federal guidance that has been issued or that may be issued. So it leaves it open to where they can put further restrictions on the funding later.
So they could come back later and say, hey, 2 million of this is disallowed, and then we have to come up with a couple million to.
So I think we need to make this a slow process and be very, very thorough with how we decide to expend it, just because there are so many questions at the moment.
Yeah, we should receive it tomorrow. But
Is there something that we can submit to the state or the feds that ask questions about allowable expenses, and is this allowable, is it not?
I think you can. I'm not sure that guidance is available.
the treasurer spoke yesterday at the governor's, and he's the one that has dispersed the money. And I don't think they really know either. I think everybody's kind of waiting for the federal government.
Well, so there's been multiple emails going back and forth between counties, because there's even questions as to whether or not we can put it in an interest-bearing account or it has to be non-interest-bearing. So I did talk with the treasurer's office on Friday, and they said right now there is no restriction on the interest bearing, but we need to be very careful with the interest that we earn on the funds at the time being, because there is no true guidance. So I think there's a lot of questions with everything involved at the moment.
So what type of account do we have it in?
We have not received it yet. And hopefully by the end of today, I'm going to give some guidance to the treasurer's office. I think we're going to put it in its own account that's interest bearing. But on the accounting side, it's deciding whether we're going to truly account for that in separate accounts or if we're going to create its own fund. I'm kind of leaning towards creating its own fund to track it all separately from everything. I will also tell you that all of the funding coming from CARES Act at the moment is almost a full-time job, because we do have to make sure that none of those funding sources are commingled, that we're not double dipping anywhere. And there are certain restrictions on some of the funds that are way more restrictive than this coronavirus relief fund. We can use some of that funding to either hire someone to help us with this or hire an agency that does this type of overseeing of grant funding and things like that. So that may be something that we want to think about, because this will be a full-time job for the next year at least.
So have we submitted a lot already to FEMA and SEMA?
So Sierra's been working, we've kind of been trying to keep up on that as we go. I've been submitting invoices to her. We have not received any funding from that yet, and we may pull some of that back, some of the PPE and things, since this funding is immediate, whereas that funding is not guaranteed to be quick. So we do still have the ability to do that.
Okay, yeah, because that number 8, says we cannot, that's basic double dipping, so.
Right. Right.
It'd be quicker if we could use this money rather than waiting.
Now, something else to keep in mind is that the public assistance funding started to where we could go all the way back to January the 20th. So any expenses from January 20th on is included in that funding. This funding does not start till March 1st. So anything prior to March 1st is not allowed with the coronavirus relief fund. So we will also make sure that we separate that funding out. So we know the things that were prior to March 1st needs to go through public assistance because that funding was available. Anything after March 1st could be used under either one, and we need to make that determination.
So I assume that we need to have a standalone meeting here in the next week or two to try to iron some of these things out.
I really think that would be a good idea.
And so I like the phases that you talked about. I mean, I think we ought to try to address PPE and like things quicker. Maybe an application or a process that maybe gets that done by the end of the month.
And I do know that EMS has been providing PPE to the local agencies, fire departments and things like that. It may be that we want to continue to purchase those in-house and distribute those instead of pushing the funding to someone else, so that we have that control over how it's being spent and what it's being spent on. For the moment, I mean, just if those are items that are needed and they're immediate, it may be that we purchase them and distribute them out instead of distributing the funding out until we get all of our other ducks in a row.
I think that's good, but, a lot of those supplies are not available. I mean, so, they're not, you can't just go buy them because
Right.
they're not out there.
Right.
So,
You order, you
well,
can come to the money.
Yeah,
well, you can order them, yeah, but, I mean, if I don't get them for 6 months, it doesn't do me much good, so.
Well, I got a feeling it's gonna be going on for 6 months more, or, so,
Well, so that brings up an additional concern. So you approve through whatever process for someone else to purchase those items, and you give them the funding. If they don't ever receive it, it's back ordered, and they don't expend it in the time frame, that liability still falls on us. So, like I said, caution needs to be used in all circumstances, because ultimately, we are responsible for the funding and how it's spent.
Right. And so I think it's all reimbursable. I mean, I don't think we ever write a check for anything. I mean, you spend the money, you turn in the receipt, and then we'll reimburse you for your expense.
So, yeah, it's just, what does that process look like? Because I'm sure most agencies are gonna want that agreement up front before they commit to use their funds, that they're going to get reimbursed for it. So I really think like a prior approval before the purchase, and then a reimbursement once you've actually purchased and can supply the proper documentation.
Right.
number 9 says that, yeah, you need a grant.
Yeah,
Document,
some
yeah.
type of contract or something that would, that we would sign once the grant was approved, or once the pre-approval was done.
So I really think at the time, we need to have a meeting soon to talk through the process and get some paperwork in line of what that reimbursement process looks like, what the agreement that they have to sign with the county looks like. All of those questions answered before we do anything.
And then what we can reimburse ourselves for that we've already expensed.
True.
Unless it's been supplemented by another grant or something else. But I mean, I do like, I think the salaries, I think that will be the hard one. I mean, so I'd like to, get more information on that, and, what's allowed, what's not allowed, and, before we start reimbursing people for personnel expenses. And then whatever that stuff that falls in the middle there is, and make part of that grant process, fall on, a lot of that burden fall on the people that are applying for that, to answer all the questions that need to be answered.
I think the city's already working on their kind of list of expenditures, and for a while there, it seemed like every weekend we were having more cases, so your Chesney and your people were working weekends.
Yeah, but as well as the city of Jefferson, we have other cities that may have
Well,
incurred
yeah.
expenses, and we
Yeah,
also have fire districts and stuff that may have had expenses, but may also need other PPE. And so, I think the PPE is probably the biggest issue that we need to address sooner than later.
Matt, have you been providing PPE to the fire districts as well? I know you're doing sheriff, JCPD, Jeff City Fire Department.
So all the response agencies in the county, we've either provided or assisted in obtaining PPE. So all the city of Jefferson departments that have requested it, the sheriff's department when we've been able to provide for them, and then of course our own. We've also been helping with public works and the bus drivers and getting a mask and different things like that as well. So we're kind of the one-stop shop for the county right now. The couple of the agencies have been getting things from the state now. Their weekly allotment, be it some bio bags or some N95s or whatever they're getting. One of our concerns is that, and we've kind of cursorily expressed it, was we'd either like to be the repository and have all of that brought here, and then we can push that out so we have a good number of what we have on hand as a county, since we've been doing this since the beginning. Or at some point we need to stop being the central repository and no longer be involved in the handling of the whole PPE for the county, because what I don't want to do is have different agencies have all different types of PPE, and yet we're still responsible for obtaining and or supplying that. We need one type of PPE preferably, and that way we can fit test them one time, and we don't have to continually, if one agency gets this type of PPE, and we have a different type, and then another one, every time you change PPE, so every time you change a mask style, not just manufacturer, but style of mask, or the actual manufacturer of the mask, you have to then fit test every employee that is going to be wearing that mask. And so that's burning PPE wastefully at some point. Right now, didn't have much of a choice. We had to, get what we could get. But moving forward, I do think either we need to become the repository for the county, or we need to get out of that business, and then every agency gets their own, but then they are responsible for their fit testing. What we don't want to do is be responsible for part of those processes or not. I don't personally care either way that goes, but I don't want it to be kind of intertwined and not. I think that's a dangerous way to do things. I think you can get people who thought things were done that weren't, and then that just puts people at risk. So either my opinion is we either do it or we don't, and move from there. But to answer your question, we have been providing the PPE in the central repository. These suits have actually been through the county, but through the emergency response team. Most of those, we have started getting our A60 suits in, and so as we get those in, we will start pulling those TIChem suits out of the circulation and putting them back that haven't been used. And then we just made another order for some more A60s last week in order to kind of help that process along. A60s are cheaper than TIChem suits, so the faster we can get those TIChem suits out of circulation, the less money we spend on them.
And we're not billing any of those other entities for?
No, sir.
Okay.
So personally, I don't want to put any added duties on EMS, but I think it is important that not only for Cole County, Jefferson City, whatever, that we all are doing something similar masks, similar PPE. And I would take it a step further. I think it needs to be even other counties surrounding Cole County. We all need to be kind of on the same page. So if we do have outbreaks, we can pull from each other, we can help each other out. And so it needs to be almost more regionally. Obviously, that's harder to do, but, huh?
Can't do it.
I disagree with you, but anyway, you can try to work with people and try to get people to come to the same table,
We're
so.
fortunate because Matt was able to get a bunch of these N95s,
Right.
but our surrounding counties don't have those. So you can't say we gotta do the same in the surrounding counties when they don't have those.
But
So-
what I'm saying is that you can work towards that, so, I mean, so that everybody's trying to have similar materials, it increases your buying power, it works well, because if you run out of something, you can call your neighbor and you can get something, so, I'm not saying it's perfect or it will work, but you can try.
I can have conversations with the surrounding EMS agencies and see if they're interested in something like that.
And the Regional Planning Commission's a great resource for that too, because we work with all those counties, so, it's 6-county region.
And you had said, I had
So-
asked you about shelf life. These are good until we use them. They don't break down after.
So specifically, which ones are we talking about?
Well,
So N95s all have shelf lives, and
Okay.
all PPE will have some type of shelf life, be it nitrile gloves or something with a latex. So N95, one of the big things, the reason why N95s break down is because they have either the latex or the nitrile straps on them, and so that can break down over time as well. So all PPE has a shelf life at some point. One of the systems that we're seriously looking at and we've tested has a 3-year warranty, 5-year battery, kind of 100% shelf life, and then slowly after that, your battery will slowly, it's a 9-hour battery, it slowly over time won't be at 7 hours or 6 hours, and then you would replace that at some point. But that's one of the processes that are systems that we're looking at, so one thing that we do want to do is that try to get everyone in the county on the same page if we are going to be the repository. If we are not, I don't care what anyone else does. But I don't want to manage 5, 6, 7, 8 different items for different agencies. That will be too cumbersome for us, and at that point, I don't think that's our responsibility. We're happy to help out, and we're happy to do it for everyone if it's the same, but if not, and that's their leaders' choices in that. So.
I think it's worked well for the last couple of months, so I would
I believe
continue.
it has. I think that
I would continue just to.
We've been leveraging our resources, both in the private and the public sectors, to try to get PPE when needed. I don't know of anyone that's gone without PPE when requested. And I think we're at a good point to maintain that for, if we see and should see a spike in cases, we should be able to handle those, over that given time frame, in a short-term environment. So I do believe it's worked so far, but again, it's not an all or nothing from that we're demanding to do it. We just don't want to manage different processes for different people.
So do you guys want to set another meeting?
Probably we need to wait until we do get something from either the federal government or state or MAC or something before. I mean, as soon as we get something, we can set a meeting within 24 hours.
I'm not sure how quickly that's going to come.
The only thing that I would like to say is there are things that we're going to need to start to purchase, the quantitative fit testing machines, that PPE. So it doesn't mean it has to come from those funds immediately, but we do need to get on those because those are back ordered. And so, some of that stuff is 2 and 3 months out. If we see a spike come, either over the summer or again in the September, October timeframe, as others are predicting, I would like to start getting at least that orders, and then we can come back and ask, or however that looks, but there is a process for at least the PPE side of it that we would like to, even if we just do it internally and purchase them, and then go back to the reimbursement model through that process.
So we need to do that besides waiting for this anyway.
Correct, however you,
So-
right, however you do
So I
that.
think we need to look at that, that's a totally separate issue. This here, the stuff we got right now is so broad, it basically just says, if it was a necessary expenditure incurred by this emergency, we can do it, but we have to have
So
all
I
our
think-
ducks in a row, and not just in the same pond, they gotta be in a row, so.
Well, I
would
think
be-
that PPE and things like that is pretty set that you can spend these
Right.
funds on those.
Yeah, I mean, we need to get them anyway, we were going to, I think so, we had discussed it.
But we
need to
can't
keep
put that
moving on
through
it.
the committee process or whatever grant writing process, whatever it is that you guys are wanting to do. I just don't want to wait to do that, so if we need to take it temporarily out of my funds and then come back and try to recoup them from that, I'm okay with that, to put it through that process. But what I'm asking is not to, if this takes, however long to put those processes together, that we don't wait for that PPE side. That's the only, my only concern is the PPE.
So Kristen, can you get a template for our grant application that we can,
I can try.
okay,
What's this,
and we could go ahead and set up.
I don't know that that's going to be a
Well, we
snap
could-
my fingers
I mean,
and,
we
We
could
got,
set
what,
up
20
a,
people in there, we can have 20 different applications
Yeah.
that we could write right now for it, because it's so,
but we could meet
General.
and figure,
I don't even think the grant application really is needed for what we're
Right.
no,
talking
for
about.
them, no.
I think internally if,
Well, but
if
it's not
we
just
are-
them, it's all PPE for all agencies that's COVID related. I mean, so let's talk about PPE, let's talk about fit testing machines, let's talk about maybe testing equipment to test, people that are maybe think they're positive or maybe have already had it, an antibodies machine. I mean, so let's talk about those obvious things and try to get those things going, because I don't think we need the grant application process for all that. But we need to know, we need to get this stuff bought or ordered or whatever that is, so that we can start getting that. And then the grant application starts coming with all these other things that are very vague. Is that kind of how you all see that?
yeah, I think there's some things like PPE that we could start immediately.
We just gotta find out what the treasurer's office needs us to provide to them as the proof for it, and what kind of paperwork to support us paying that money out.
I think you just need to have some type of guidance on the PPE as far as how you're going to do this. Is it going to be the county purchases it and then provides it, right, pushes it out to those agencies on what they requested? Or is it, you know, hey, XYZ agency, this is the amount you're getting to purchase that? Is it, I think there are some questions that maybe a meeting would help answer
I
as
think
far
there's a
as.
lot of questions. I
Well,
think we need,
I think you already discussed that. I think it's like Chris said, they expend the money, then they bring the receipt to you, and then you pay it, or the invoice, and then you pay the invoice. I mean, I think that's your,
But I mean, the PPE might be different in that we're purchasing it, and we just want everybody agreeable that we're purchasing the stuff that everybody wants, or we can all agree on one item that this works, or,
Just because of our volume, we're able to leverage more.
Right.
And get better pricing, so, but again, we also don't want to manage that process if it's going to all be different. So, and again, I don't care how anyone does it, and what you guys decide is your decision. But what I don't wanna do, again, is manage different items or different processes, and if it's going to be where you guys want them to go out, purchase their own, and then submit receipts, that won't come through our agency in order to do that, because then we're gonna be caught in some paperwork shuffle that we don't wanna be involved in either.
so is that what you see, people wanting different things, and so,
So I think there's potential for that. I don't know. So I mean, I think that it depends on if they're strictly sticking to the infectious disease process. Are they looking at dual role items? Are they looking at, you know, I think it's a broad term. And so it just depends on where you're going specifically to that. You know, is it, hey, this does meet the protection for COVID, but it also does X, Y, Z? Or is it, this is strictly an infectious disease process, PPE related thing? Not saying one's right or wrong, but it does change that dynamic of how that is managed or purchased or procured and the processes it goes through. As far as, A, what your intent is, which, since you're distributing and responsible for that money, and then how do they go back and get it, and is it a free-for-all, like, you know, however much it is, or is there a limit? I think those are those questions that, if it's going to go outside to where every agency does their own thing, we're all going to need guidance on that, so that we don't just have the blanket statement of, hey, get what you want and bring us a receipt and we'll pay for it, because that can get super expensive real quick and probably a chance for outside the scope of what should be.
and the last thing we want is a large purchase and they submit it and us say, nope, that's not
Yeah.
allowed.
So if anything, just even guidance, regardless of how that plays out, I think a guidance document or some type of guidance from you guys, so that we're all operating under the same understanding, would be helpful. I don't look pretty in orange, so.
so, I mean, obviously, that guidance, you know, I think needs to have a conversation with law enforcement and fire and EMS, and, you know, where can we come to common ground to, you know, have something there that we're not all ordering something different. And so I mean, is that something that you guys could discuss at the EOC and kind of work on that, or, I mean, because, I mean,
Talk about
for me to give you guidance on PPE, I think is kind of silly, because I'm not wearing it now, and I don't plan on wearing it in the future, and, so, it's hard for me to
The
say.
only thing I'd interject is if you guys do, where you're the governing body, if you have some oversight on it and some direction to it, I think it gives it more credibility on the back end. If we are audited, that there was thought process that went into it, and that we were operating under what we saw, you know, what you guys see as your boundaries, because otherwise it sounds like it's a free-for-all.
Well, the county accepted the money, so we are ultimately the responsible party, and I signed for it, so, you know, all of our communities, Russellville, if they needed something, they can, you know, Jefferson City, but it's still, we are the entity that controls the money, so we need to be very, very careful on how it is dispersed, because ultimately it comes back to us. And if I go, Kristen's going.
When it comes to the PPE, if he orders 10,000 N95s and he's giving them, they're gonna use them. The reason why these agencies are getting these other ones in are, number one, they're donated, and number two, it's, they don't have anything. I have some of the KN95s that are bad, right? They're not the best thing in the world, but a KN95 is better than no 95. So you put those on the shelf and you leave them there, and you have a blast there, you break in case of emergency. If it went as bad as we thought it was gonna, and we ran out of the N95s, then we would have went to the KN95s, because they're better than nothing. So I don't think that's an issue. He orders 10,000 N95s and says, if you want them, you gotta get fitted for them, and here they are. They're gonna come to him and get them. That's not an issue. That's not even an issue. You don't even have to worry about that.
Yeah.
But as those aren't available, I mean, we start looking at other types of face masks or, you know, other items that could be part of your PPE that may be more expensive items, but may last for longer periods of time. And so, I think all that's on the table right now. So, you know, is there some type of a biohazard type mask or something that we could use for COVID that could be used for other things?
One of the big things we have is the wear on the provider being in N95 for long transports, especially if they're going to Kansas City, Springfield, St. Louis, transporting one of those patients. That gets that's an issue from the providers. So in those instances, we do need to have something that they're not sitting in a PPE mask for 4 hours or 3 hours. That's fatiguing, to say the least, trying to breathe through one of those for that long consistently. So there are options that we're looking at, and I think that my personal opinion is it meets the intent of what keeps everyone safe. You know, we went and tested it, we put it on, I got pictures, we wore it, we tested it. You know,
The rebreathing.
yeah, the positive pressure mask, it's super light. I mean, we're told that it's on a cooperative, cheaper than we even thought, that we might be able to get our hands on. So we're waiting for those documents. But that may not work for everyone. And if it doesn't, then we just don't want to manage everything, right? If it's, hey, yeah, this works for everybody, great. We'll buy the cartridges and like whatever those are. I don't want to tell another agency they have to use something. Me personally, I'm not going to tell them that, but I'm also not going to manage their stockpile if they don't, because I don't think that's fair to our staff to do that either.
Kristen, do you want to set another meeting for later this week or next week?
Who do you want at the meeting?
Well, I don't know. That's, you know,
I mean, I'm fine with that. I'm good with maybe Thursday, but who do you want at the table at the moment? Do you just want you guys to determine? Do you want our agencies? Do you want outside agencies?
well, we need to figure out who is going to oversee the money and,
We're gonna oversee that.
well, I know, but I mean, but you
I think
can't,
let's get us together again, because we can talk for another hour on this and not go anywhere.
Do you want our agencies here though? Like you want EMS, health
I-
department?
As much as I want to say no, I think we need them in here. Sorry, John. Just picking on
Get them
you
live,
two.
actually, you'd be surprised.
But
I think they are the ones that are gonna guide us on what we need and what is necessary for the situation, and that's the determination at the moment. Necessary expenditures for COVID.
as long as they can track it and verify that it's actually used for that kind of stuff, I I think, pretty black and white. It's the gray stuff that I think is gonna be a problem later on. All the stuff we've talked about today, I mean, Sam's red Corvette, okay,
No,
that's
No,
easy, no.
no.
PPE, yes. Educational materials, that seems like a yes, but I would think that'd be coming from the state and federal government already. Why the hell are we gonna have to redo this stuff? I mean, we should be able to hand out stuff left and right that are handed down to us. But it's not necessarily coming, so it may be something that we need to address. So,
It's not showing up.
it's not showing up.
we can sit here all day and keep talking
Yeah.
about it.
Well, and I think that there's other things that other departments are seeing at the moment, the windows that were put in, you know, the things that we've done in response to COVID already that we need to talk about. You know, the expenditures that we've had since March 1st to respond to COVID that we need to talk about.
Are we gonna hire an outside? I mean, it needs to be separate.
We are to audit the money, so I don't feel like my office should be running the money. I feel that way about every grant that the county gets. We have to audit the work and oversee what's happening and making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. We shouldn't be the one also doing it. So I don't know what that looks like at the moment, but I will tell you, it's going to be a full-time job for someone at the moment.
I would agree with you on that. It's not your job to necessarily track it, but to verify it.
Right.
So, I don't know, did you email us about that, getting an outside, somebody like that handles grants or an outside?
I haven't yet.
CPA or something?
I have not yet.
Somebody mentioned it.
Yeah.
Was that from you, Sam?
Yeah, he said something about CPA, but this is more probably a grant administrator than it is a CPA.
That's a good record keeper is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so, I mean,
'Cause
there are-
ultimately, we're making a decision, they're dispersing it, you're
Right.
verifying it.
Right. So there are options. I mean, we could contract with someone else to be that person to oversee that, or we could hire. So that's another discussion to have.
I do think if you hire someone, you can also then at some point transition them to other grant opportunities in the county and potentially still continue to push that money forward. Would be my, we all have grant opportunities, we just all don't have a lot of time to get to them.
So it could be someone that transitions into a grant writer for the county or something like that.
I'd add that to the discussion. So, when do you wanna meet again?
Thursday, or you wanna wait till next week?
I don't think we're gonna have any more information this Thursday than we have
No.
now, so.
I'd like to push it a week, and I'd like, I'd like to know what the fire districts and the fire department, I mean, what are they thinking for PPE? I mean, it's a bigger topic, I mean, if that's what we're focused is on.
We'll reach out,
PPE.
we'll reach out and try to get that
I mean,
information.
so, I think everything's on the table, so what would you like to have? What could you reuse that's you already have that maybe you just need cartridges for? I mean, what's your type of biohazard or hazmat suit or whatever that is that,
So next week, you wanna do Tuesday or Thursday, probably works better. We have EOC on Monday.
We could do it Tuesday after our regular meeting. I mean,
Tuesday afternoon.
You wanna do like a 1 or
1.
1:30 on Tuesday?
Probably 1.
You're the bosses, you guys.
Yeah, you guys get to decide when.
I'll miss your policy group call.
I don't care if you wanna do it next Tuesday, you wanna do it next Tuesday afternoon then, so we come in, we beat the heck out of all the other stuff, and then we come back in the afternoon and a standalone discussion on this after that, since we're here already.
Mhm.
You're part of the policy, you really have to be on that 1:30 meeting. Now, in the last 15 minutes, you can do it at 2 o'clock and we'd be up here in time, it's not a big deal, but,
Well, I can do it from here.
right. But
Okay, 2:00.
Two-
Usually my
yeah.
nap time, but I guess.
About 6 AM.
I'm here.
It's good
Usually.
at 4:00, so we're for sure done by 5.
I'll
One
bring
of the
them
things I
away
think
there,
the
so.
questions that need to be answered before that is this money only be allowed to be used within political subdivisions and not outside non-political subdivision agencies or companies? My understanding is that it's strictly for political agencies, not for any other type, is from what I've read so far. And we just need to make sure that if that's true, we don't try to disperse this to a non-political agency, because that's a big.
So we can't give it to ABC preschool to put
Or,
windows up or
or health
something,
systems,
or
because they have other money
to
funds
the
coming
lumber
in
yard
and
for
things.
putting
Right.
windows up in front of their,
We just gotta make sure that it's a
Checkouts.
political subdivision, from what I've read so far, but I'm sure there'll be more guidance, but we need to make sure that we're following who's eligible as well, not just what.
Yeah, it says number 9, a county or city not within a county may use funds received pursuant to this certification to make a grant to any other political subdivision within its jurisdiction.
so I would assume that what you were saying is correct, it's a political subdivision. I'd say if we got any questions or anything before then, email them to Sam. Well, we need to have one
Yeah.
person to go to, and
Yeah.
I don't think this is something that, unless Kristen's volunteering,
I heard her volunteering.
You heard me volunteer?
I did.
well.
That
okay.
silent volunteer?
Yes.
He's hearing voices. Nomination. Yeah.
Just beware, we are in the middle of the audit this week, so, yeah, we will do what we can.
I was trying to help you out.
Thanks, Kristen.
Yeah.
That bus you heard back in Oldview. was
Yeah.
me.
I heard the beep, beep, beep this morning already.
All right.
So,
That's
So we'll come
Tuesday at
back
2.
Tuesday at 2.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have discussion of 2020-13 crew cab mechanics truck.
So is this just to find out if we're gonna go ahead with it, or is this we're awarding it, or we were talking about that a little bit earlier?
Well,
Well,
You got any money
No.
left? No. This is
yes.
discussion on, actually, probably, we actually put this out to bid ourselves.
I'm not so worried about the money right now, it's the money probably the next 3 months, we start seeing the sales tax
Okay.
proceeds. That might be interesting.
The first one's kind of my, just run through. The first one, that upper one is up there, it's just a little easier to go through. It shows what they actually bid, each one of them. Gives you specs on when they're gonna deliver them and anything they missed. Custom truck, is the one at the top. They're the most expensive one, but they're also the one that says 30 to 60 day, delivery date. And they meet all the specs on them.
The others did meet specs on everything, and then, like I said, there is a difference there, that's why I wanted to bring it to your attention. I know there's a question of whether or not the funding's available, with what's going on. So, yes, Chris, it is a twofold question. Do we go forward, or Jeff, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Jeff.
That's all right.
Do we go forward, and if we do, we have a question about, our biggest concern right now is with these trucks, we had a Dodge ordered last year, that we didn't get, because Dodge just out of the blue said we can't make it after we waited, I don't know, 6 months or so.
6 months or better, yes.
The one that's being offered that does meet all the requirements, is available, it's actually sitting on the ground already.
The custom truck one?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a 2019, so it's a,
It's a brand new truck.
Yeah.
But they're a huge dealer and they buy large amounts of trucks and have them on the ground setting there, so they actually have the truck there ready to be built. That truck and the backhoe that we've already ordered, both of those are out of the half-cent sales tax. Between the two of them are $945 under budget, between the service truck and the backhoe.
So there is a big difference, or not a big difference, but there's a difference in price. I mean, but when you meet the spec and you have aluminum doors and you have stainless steel hinges, that adds up to a lot. I mean, because I've bought aluminum beds, I've bought stuff that doesn't rust, and so there's a big difference there. And
That's
then
the issue that we're facing with our current shop trucks, with the materials that, when these trucks go out in the wintertime especially, they're in the harshest of conditions, and having a compartmentalized truck, they're gonna rust. And we're trying, you know, to make the trucks last longer.
Do our best to build something that'll stay there with us for at least 10,
Right.
15 years again.
I mean, I can tell you, I've had nap-hide beds, and they build a good bed, but they're steel, and I've had floors rust out of them. I've had bottoms rust out of the compartments, and so. But I mean, that's just part of wear and tear. But I've also since bought all aluminum beds, and they never rust. They're around for a long time. I mean, so it's night and day. I mean, it truly is. So. I mean, it's when the truck falls apart, you take the bed off and you put it on another truck. I mean, it's not that the truck and the bed all get thrown away. It's you got something there, and so obviously the crane on there, you know, makes a difference too. Some of them bid a 7-ton crane versus a 6-ton crane.
Our spec itself has a 7-ton crane in it, and the Krantz bodybuilder, they actually built a 6, or bid a 6, I'm not sure why, but,
You know, there's also the question about sales tax, and we've had conversations with Christian, you know, about projects we can hold back later, in the construction season. I hate to see us push off equipment purchases just because we're still trying to catch up from past commissions.
previous years.
You know, I would rather push a project, delay it a year until we have the funding, than we still, every year, you're gonna have winter, and, you know, and during the summer, this truck goes out to service our equipment. Like I said, I'd rather push a smaller project back, to make budgets meet. You know, we're just as concerned as, I think Christian is, not only with this one, but with our 211 budget, just as CART funds, what we're hearing are down, is just to make sure that we can still maintain our fleet as well as we can. You know, we may have to push other projects, back, but we still have to do our maintenance, our daily maintenance, and again, equipment is a concern of ours.
I'm good with moving forward.
Yeah, I am too. Yes, later on, we might have to really do a lot of shifting around, but
You know, and that's a concern, like I said, we're well aware of it, and we don't make his recommendation lightly, but, again, I don't wanna see our equipment go backwards. I'd like to at least maintain, you know, this isn't an improvement, it's just replacement of current trucks. Both of these items are our current trucks that are in our fleet. You know, it's nothing new, it's just replacement of what we've got.
Yeah, and when we get our new ones in, these here, well, what we do have sitting there now, both will probably all go on to, for sale, either on Gov Deals or through one of the other sources out there to put them up to auction them off. So some of that money will come back in our budget.
So what are you recommending, custom truck?
I would rather go with custom trucks just because it meets the requirements. I personally have concerns about not going with bids. You know, if they had all couldn't get some particular equipment, like I said, for some reason, the companies chose to bid something other than what we had spec. I don't know if it's a game we're playing to try and get a bid or what, but you know, that's what we spec'd out. We met with our mechanics on this truck, trying to figure out the, you know, the best, most economical way we could get the equipment as well as keep it in service longer.
Well, there's a reason that they need a 7-ton crane too. I mean, you go out there and you're working on heavy equipment and you gotta pick one side of it up
Well,
or
the spreaders
whatever.
we're
I mean,
picking up nowadays, we pick up off the trucks. That's the crane we have now is a 6.5 ton, I think, and there's sometimes it'll barely pick up some of the bigger spreaders to get them on and off the truck. So the crane
Right.
itself is.
When we have the truck go down in the wintertime, if it's got a spreader on it, we've gotta get it off there to be able to work on the truck. And that's what the crane's being utilized for, is to be able to lift these off so we can get the maintenance work done on it, get it back into service and get it back out on the road.
Right, but you also got high lifts that you may have to fix a track on, or you got backhoes that you may need to do some work
Just-
on to get a tire off of it, or whatever that may be, and so
Just, you know,
that
just
stuff ain't
getting-
light.
You know, the grader tires, you know, during the summer, we'll have, you know, cases where they'll go flat out on the road. We've gotta get out there, be able to get it. And those aren't something that, you know, two guys can lift up, so, it's something we, you know, like I said, just be able to maintain and keep our roads in passable shape, you know, in the foreseeable future. Our recommendation is to move forward with custom truck.
Questions there, Jeff, or?
Yeah, I notice there's no warranty on that, but is it available? Did they offer it?
Oh, I didn't bring the actual bit. You talking about on custom truck stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's warranty on them. I did not bring the sheets back in here for what those are, but
It says NA underneath the bid. That was just one of the things I was looking at. I was just trying to compare that one to the Broadway. What was the difference in it? I didn't look at your sheet and it broken down.
well, one of them is because our actual spec in there was actually for a Dodge truck. I don't know why some of them bid with Ford.
Okay, because it was a Ford and we spec'd it. Dodge.
Yes.
That was okay.
The truck itself will be under a normal powertrain warranty. And then the beds and that stuff on them, I'd have to go back. I didn't actually bring the bid with me and look at it, but
Well, column one says 3 years, 36,000 miles, bumper to bumper.
yeah. The actual truck itself will have an extended Dodge warranty on it.
Okay. Okay, well, they met all the specs, so.
Good.
Yeah.
I move that we award the crew cab mechanics truck to Custom Trucks.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, discussion of single axle dump truck purchase.
This is another one that's in our budget. This is through Shepherd. This is off the Sourcewell contract. This is a complete truck, snowplow spreaders, everything on it and finished. The final number is on the back. Which, yes, I'm gonna give you this one, but it's got a spot on the side. If you agree. How's that sound? I think this one, you have that one.
Oh, you
Take
have
the
that
with
one?
the pretty red stuff.
That's pretty, it's got color on it.
There you go, yep. The final bill price on this truck is $183,150.64. We had $180,000 even in our budget for our single axle this year. I think I'm gonna have to start upping how much I raise them every year for what my estimates are, but we do still have some money left in our, from our GPS sprayer we were under on, and we were under on our flex forms a little, and we haven't bought the pickup that's on there yet either, so, and that is out of our 211 budget. That's stainless steel bed, that's exactly, pretty much the exact same thing as the last one we bought that was a tandem. That the stainless steel beds and new stainless steel spreaders and a brand new snowplow on it. It's auger spreader instead of a chain. We went to that because we seem to think that works pretty well. The actual hydraulic tank and stuff on it are all stainless. And that is a piggyback bid through Henderson for the actual bed and the hydraulic systems and all that stuff that actually goes through Shepherd's on that not sole source, but source well contract.
So it's a Henderson spreader.
Henderson spreader, Henderson bed, Henderson snowplow. The actual, I didn't actually throw the spec part of that attached into there for that part of it. I have it in here if you'd like to see it, but. If you want to look through that, this is actual, the rest of the quote thing that come from Henderson that actually goes through International. So they come together as one price.
I just didn't see any of that on this.
Yeah, it's
I mean, I see all the specs on the truck, but there's nothing about a spreader or snowplow in there.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Very bottom one, Henderson
Yeah.
body.
Henderson's all it says, but the actual quote itself is, I do have a copy of that if you'd like to see it. Which actually, they quote a price to Shepherd's off of that contract, and then that gets tied back together all through Sourcewell. Which we've purchased the last 2 or 3 vehicles that way. Seems to work pretty well.
Do we have other bids on this, or?
That is just a Sourcewell, that's a straight bid
Oh,
from them.
so
and it's on
cooperative.
Cooperative, yes.
Is that the way all them trucks are going, was automatic transmissions?
They are. We're not buying anything with standards in it anymore, I don't think. They cost more money, but just about anybody can drive them. Or not anybody can drive one, maybe I should rephrase that, but,
They
That's
can make
kinda
it go
scary.
forward.
yeah.
They can make it go forward.
Drive it, operate it out, we'll call it 2 different things.
I agree with you there.
But it is easier to find drivers for them.
We're seeing more and more when we do it, try and hire somebody, you know, a lot of the people have been in automatics only, so. And the drivers, that have switched from, standard to, it's less, wear and tear on them, especially in the winter time. They're not shifting all the time, so.
Yep. I'm good with this too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I move that we approve the purchase of the single axle dump truck with Shepherd's International Truck Center.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think that's it.
Merry Christmas.
Won't see See y'all till next year then.
I'm not, yeah, I'm not done.
So that means you're not retiring.
Oh, yeah, I'm
Oh.
retired.
Oh, you said you'd see us next year. I
Yeah,
can get y'all all in on that.
we got that on
You do?
tape, yeah.
Not that's counting it, 181 days coming in.
Yeah.
Not that you're counting.
I'll need that.
You know that's why we put you last on the list to make you stick around for a little
I'll
longer.
give it to you, you can get hit signed, and then after that, we'll run it through. I'll take those guys out
You mean to put it back in your mailbox? You gotta wait.
there. I done it down there, you can put it in there, I'll come get it.
Okay, so I can take one for each. What about the other one? You don't have one.
I just
Uh-huh.
actually sign thing on it, as long as they
Oh.
approve it through the minutes, I'll.
Yeah, did you go out? and-
There'll be a PO thing.
No,
All right. Thank you.
It's on Larry Friday on that one.
We got anything else? Or we done?
You got anything? I got, Ralph Job sent me a,
Hold on.
this is on the census. I got this last week.
Hey.
Smack your gravel
Say,
there.
I can't hear. I got too many things going on.
Hey,
Arrest that guy.
I kinda lost
okay, I received this from Ralph Job. This is the census, which is taking place. National response, US is 52.8, Missouri is 53.8, Cole County is 61.4. We are tied with Clay for fourth in the state out of 113 counties. Taos, 70.3% have responded. Wardsville, 69.7 have responded. St. Thomas, 66.7. St. Martin, 63.5. Jefferson City, 60.1. Russellville, 54.8. Debbie's gotta get on that. Centertown's 54.4, so we're really in pretty good shape.
East side's doing pretty good.
Yeah, okay, that's all I have. Anything else?
I do not have anything else.
Anything?
I was just trying to get through that so we can get everybody out of here.
Get out of here.
I move we stand in recess till 4:30.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The
Yes,
census thing?
yes.